Hi, everybody. Now, I know you might be tuning in to see this week's edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Elena Pinto. I promise that is going to be published a little bit later on today, Veterans Day, November 11th, 2024. It was 2 years ago that I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with Stephen Mandile. He happens to be the answer to a great trivia question because he was the first adult to buy legal cannabis in the state of Massachusetts in November of 2018. He's also a veteran and someone who believes that this plant, cannabis, can save other veterans' lives, and he too has a very special story. So, without any further ado, let's introduce you to Stephen Mandile with a little bit of a flashback to Veterans Day 2 years ago to hear his story. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Hey, Jim. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here on Veterans Day. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, because I know you were in demand all over the place today, this whole week. So I do appreciate you carving out a little bit of a slice for us just to chit chat for a little while before we get to that show. And by the way, you were on that last show back in 2021, in case you didn't remember.
I do remember that show. That was a great show. Heavy on the veteran content. I always love it.
Yeah, no, I think it was great. I think we actually played your PSA in the middle of that too at some point. So we do appreciate that. Hey, I obviously have a very a good background on who you are and what you've gone through in your life. But I always like to review that with people because you never know who's watching this program, perhaps for the first time, or our regulars who tune in on a regular basis on Friday afternoon. And I just thought it might be good for them to kind of hear what is your background. I mean, you are a veteran of the Iraq War, and you served in the Massachusetts National Guard troop that ended up going to Iraq. Isn't that right?
Yes, Jimmy. Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is my least favorite thing to do, but it's important to talk about it, talk about my journey, how I started. So I was injured in Iraq, it was in a Humvee crash, had a severe spinal cord injury, ended up getting medevaced home. An interesting part of that was, I got airlifted out. So I was airlifted out with people that are with fellow service members that are clinging on to life. Like, they have a full team with them on this plane, working on them the entire time when we fly from Kuwait, from Iraq to Kuwait, then Kuwait to Germany. And I was in a position where I was barely able to walk, so I'm on a stretcher and I'm around all these amazing people, and I'm just in awe the whole time. And it was an interesting journey coming back home. Ended up having spinal cord fusion. I found out I had brain injury and, of course, PTSD. Wanted to get better, so I followed the treatment plan that was laid out in front of me by the VA. It just so happened that it was lined with I had 57 different medications over a decade that I tried to ease the pain and be able to move forward with my life, when all of these medications really did nothing besides stop me from growing, and the opposite of growing is dying. And I was just focused on everything wrong in life, everything that made me angry, everything that made me hate, and went to a dark place, to a suicide attempt. I'm fortunate and blessed with an incredible family. So I had that support system to pull me out of that, and quickly realized that between that and cannabis, I'm blessed with things that a lot of people don't have. They don't have a support system. They don't have the wherewithal, the clarity from the love they get to think, maybe I should try something different. It's tough. Other people with addiction know about this as well. It's not just exclusive to the military side of things. But yeah, I talked with my primary care doctor at the VA, said, I want to get off this stuff. You keep telling me you want to stop giving it to me, stop writing me the script, but I'm coming every month and I'm getting more fentanyl, more Percocets, all these medications that are, when I look them up, I'm like, these are terrible for me. Let me try something else if I can try all that. So I was, again, just fortunate to have a doctor that would listen and seeing what it was doing. So she literally put her job on the line to be able to lower my doses and taper me off and delay any sort of random urinalysis, because at that time, if you test positive for cannabis or anything that they're not prescribing you, they take all your prescriptions away. So then you're left cold turkey. So I didn't want to do that. I knew that was failure. And after 5 months of using cannabis and tapering off, I was off of all but two drugs that weren't opioids. So it was separate drugs that I eventually got off of and later on, which, but with cannabis made it possible. I wasn't looking ever to get rid of all the pain. I just wanted to get the enough pain off, but be able to keep my senses and have my wherewithal and be present. On those other medications, I couldn't do that. Cannabis allowed that, and allowed me to be able to think, okay, where am I going from here? How do I keep growing? And started looking around and said, all right, veterans don't have access to this. We need more access to this. I need to just go let people know about this. So started talking publicly about my journey and what I've seen and what I've experienced. And even after all this time, I still get people that thanking me for, in one breath, thanking me for my service, and the next breath, you're an addict. You're still an addict. You're on something else. And it's like, I'm okay with that, because the amount of people I've been able to help with cannabis, veterans and non-veterans alike, from, having veterans call me and I'm going over the house at 1:00 in the morning to just listen. Like, just listen and really smoke a joint and listen and just be like, all right, this does suck, but we're going to get through it. And that's it. And then to get that vilified by the same people that are telling us that they're there to help us in any way possible, it's bananas. And it's really difficult for a lot of veterans to wrap their head around it. And it's even, I feel like it's impossible for a civilian to kind of understand it, not even just the military side, but just the VA side of things. It's like, what?
Right. Well, I'm going to give you credit for a lot of things. First of all, you talk so beautifully, openly about the trials you've had. And we both have heard so many of these stories about how cannabis has changed my life. Cannabis has saved my life. Yours is always the one I bring up because I remember you telling me the story the first day of adult use sales in Massachusetts. And I believe it was November 20th, 2018. I might have that mixed up. Is it the November 18, 2018? I think it's November 20th, 2018. Do you remember?
You just messed me up. I was going to say 18, but then you said 20, so I'm not sure. But it's one of those two, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think it was 18 and 18 because then my mind would have remembered that. The 20 and 18 is where I think it is. So bottom line is you were the first one to purchase legal cannabis in Massachusetts. Can you tell me a little bit? I don't know if I know the backstory on how you got to the front of the line, Stephen.
Yeah, so that was what? That was 2016. It was the summer before the election, and I was already, without even knowing what was going on, I was standing out in front of the State House with signs about cannabis helping veterans and opioids, hurting us. A member of the campaign just happened to walk by and started, chatting me up, and I had a lot of practice from so many other people walking by being like, what's an opioid? And I'm going through wild. It was wild times. And I learned so much from people walking by, and I really learned how to communicate with people. And again, these were things I did not like to do. And I thought the only way I can change things is to do everything different. So, okay, you hate talking, get out there and go talk.
Right.
Things like that. And they asked me to be a spokesperson for the Yes on 4 campaign. And I did that knowing that while medical cannabis gives access to patients that are okay with registering, there's still a lot of people that benefit from cannabis that don't want to register and just want and are okay with paying the 20% sales tax on it and having to pay a little more for it and having no discounts. But in order for privacy, I understand that. So I saw that as another pathway for veterans, teachers, corrections officers, firefighters, everyone that gets tested and stigmatized that can't have it and can't risk being registered, to be able to have a pathway. So I wanted to do that. And then from recognized as a spokesperson, because I showed up in everyone's mailboxes, they asked me to be the first patient.
And that's great. And I remember that day. I was really glad that we made the trek out there to cover it. I remember, actually it's very similar to what's that?
It was like a snowy,
I was going to say it was like 30, 40 degrees, and it was kind of rainy and ugly. And there were hundreds of people in line out at now. It's not Cultivate anymore. That's been sold a few times, which is fine. But it was out in Leicester, and again, the people that I talked to there recognized that it was a historic moment. And that was the day we met. I totally remember it.
Yep.
And when you told me the story, and I think the number you said was you were on something like 70 opioids, 70
No,
different
no,
types
no.
of.
57 different medications and 9 different opioids.
Ay, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. And on top of all this, now that you've become a face of the advocacy movement and all that, you've also had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and talk on behalf of your fellow veterans. Am I right?
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that. That's been something that's, not only helped me help veterans, but it's really benefited my soul to be able to go down there with other veterans and get things done and actually see something from start to end. It is amazing. And where we're at on Veterans Day, I want to mention too, to thank all the veterans that are watching and listening, even the ones that aren't, and equally as important, their families that love them. Like there's no love like a spouse or loved one of a veteran that can deal with all that. There's so many days where we find it impossible to love ourselves or even like ourselves, and there they are loving us and lifting us up. On my trips down to DC, I've gotten to meet a lot of family members that have really touched my life. This past Memorial Day in May, I was down there to help advocate to push it's called the PACT Act, which was to give veterans benefits from toxic exposure from overseas at bases, and for them to be able to get treatment for it. Unfortunately, politics were played with it this over the summer in June, and they had 44 Republican senators vote it down for made up reasons. When we asked afterwards, it was Senator Toomey who was really driving the no vote, claiming that there was a slush fund in this bill and it was this and that. But every time someone asked them to point to it, they couldn't. There was nothing there. It was just a lie. They'd taken a vote, I believe it was June 27th. No, was it? I can't remember the exact date. I'm sorry, but
that's all right.
Voted on it. 44 voted no, and they showed it. Watching it on C-SPAN, and those senators are down on the Senate floor, fist bumping and high fiving each other because they blocked a bill giving healthcare benefits to our sickest veterans and their families. So I go back because veterans say, "Screw this! You're about to leave for July break. No one's going anywhere until this is figured out because we are done waiting." Veterans slept out on the Capitol for 7 days and nights to get this done. To get, I think it was 25 of them. We got to change their vote, but it took Gold Star families,
right,
widows. It took, I was out there. I was out there in a monsoon, sleeping out there, sitting out there all day with veterans that were terminally ill with cancer, walking around with their oxygen tanks, talking to members of Congress, pleading with them, like, we're not leaving because we're sick of watching our friends die. I met incredible family members. Rosie Torres, her and her husband are the founder of Burn Pits 360. Leroy is her husband's name. He has such a rare cancer that they can't treat, and now he gets benefits and they're not paying out of pocket. I unfortunately also met a family. It was actually the Heath Robinson's family. The PACT Act was actually named after him. It's the Staff Sergeant Heath Robinson Non-Exposure PACT Act exposure bill. And I met his mother-in-law, Suzanne Zier, and she was telling me stories of, they had to have a hospital bed in their house because the VA wouldn't treat him. He had a cancer so rare in his lungs, no tumors, okay? But full of cancer. So the doctors are saying this is definitely from being exposed to burn pits, gas. And the VA was like, yeah, but he smoked cigarettes. So he bled out in his living room floor, throwing up everything. His family got no benefits. She was telling me stories of how after he died, her and her daughter, which was the widow of Heath Robinson, were cutting out the carpet themselves on their hands and knees and replacing carpet because it was just so stained and ruined, and they couldn't afford to pay anybody, and the VA wasn't giving them any benefits. So it was a realization that veterans get used as political pieces, and it's really time now more than ever for veterans to start standing up and making it so like it can't happen, whether it's running or always being in touch with your elected officials to make sure they're doing stuff instead of just, hey, we want to take a picture with you. It's like, well, what have you accomplished this year, this legislative session for veterans? And that's really, you have to do that, because the way we're going to help the most veterans is through policy change, which takes, and I don't think people understand this, an act of Congress, which is one of the most I could probably train to run a marathon before I could write a bill and get it passed.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and Lord knows we can talk about this for hours, because I rave about this a lot, that we've lost what it means to be an American. And I'm talking about the both sides of the aisle, because they continue to point fingers at each other. And somebody needs to point the finger at the damn flag, because you guys put your lives on the line for that right. And no one should be able to take that away from you. I don't care what political party you are. These are the people, veterans are the people that need the help, because you've already paid the ultimate price. You have given years, months, whatever it is, time, service time of your life for this country's freedoms. Yep. So, I'm sitting here looking at the scorecard of the Congress, and the Republicans have this many seats and Democrats have this many seats, and in the Senate is this. And I'm like, I'm not a big fan of the two-party system. Okay. Nope. I believe in a true democracy, not the republic that we have, even though we all know it's the best system in the world. There are changes that have to be made. Do you know that the only thing that both sides of the aisle agreed on unanimously over the last couple of years is the fact that slavery was a bad thing? It took them 166 years to figure that out. Really? Right. These are the people we're voting into office. So again, it's still up to people, the citizenry, to share those feelings with their elected officials, right? And you mentioned it, especially for veterans' rights.
Mm-hmm. And I know again, anytime I point my finger at something and say that needs to change, I look back and, the other finger's pointing back at me and saying, what am I doing to change that? Right. I didn't understand the way things work. So I ran for office and thought, okay, let me learn how to do this. I'm not a good student, like sitting in a classroom kind of student. I need to go and see how it works. I need to, take a piece, see all the pieces moving to be able to understand it. I have a thick skull, so it takes some time to get through to the brain. But I get it. And like, that was my whole thing. I don't know if I'll ever go higher than municipal politics, because I don't want to choose a party. Being a municipal servant and elected official, I'm here to help the people that need help. I don't care what R, D, I, whatever letter you have in front of your name. It doesn't matter. I want to help you. And especially when it comes to veterans. Veterans are the only people in my life that get the benefit of, I will love you until you hurt me and give me a reason not to. Right. I don't give that kind of benefit to anyone else besides a veteran, because I know what they've sacrificed. I know they're hurting. I know sometimes, like a hurt dog, if you go to pet it, it might bite you a little bit. That it's expected. It's okay to me. But when someone else, and I just get you're liberal, you're conservative. Like, I'm not. I'm
American.
All of you.
You're an American, Stephen. That's right. What you are. We all are. And what we've done, you mentioned it, RDI. How about just an A? We need to have an A party, the American party. This is what we need. Somebody told me my preaching, I should be running. And I'm like, no, please, no. And I give you credit, because not only did you decide to do something about it, you literally gave yourself to your town. And local politics, this is one of the things that people miss, because what good is my vote in Massachusetts? We know which way the state's going to go. That's half the problem. That labeling. These are our expectations. We need to change those labels, get rid of those labels, and find common ground. Find common ground on both sides of the aisle, and stop pointing fingers and looking for blame. And, you're one of those, or you're this, or you're that. We've lost this, because I got to tell you, the inmates are running the asylum in media these days. Okay. It's consumer-driven content. You guys, everybody out there gets to watch what they watch, when they watch it, how they watch it, where they watch it, and who's telling it to them.
You ask most kids, school-age children right now, what they want to be, and they want to be a social media influencer. Like, what does that mean? So again, taking it upon my kids, like you can look at that, but it's about service, it's about community, it's about having skin in the game in this, and you can't change what's going on all across Massachusetts or all over the country if you're not working on what's in your town and where you live in your community.
Right. And that vote perhaps is even more important than voting in the presidential election, right? And it's always the lowest voter turnout. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. Even town meetings. And again, I'm not blaming everyone for not knowing, because I didn't know much before I started doing it. But once you look in, you kind of with the sausage factory, see how the sausage is made. It's ugly, but you got to get past that and be like, okay, we gotta live here. We gotta find a way to make this work.
Yeah. Hey, there was a news item today in the Massachusetts area, and I think people who watch this show on a regular basis know that we're originating from the Massachusetts area. But coming up in just a few minutes, we have a show of people from all over the country explaining all these kinds of issues and what they've gone through. And we definitely want you to stay tuned for that. I'm probably going to go into the chat room and chat with the people that watch this show on a regular basis. And then, of course, at the end of that, we will be running our weekly Weed Talk No News program. However, one story did not make the news, and we can explain why if you really want to know. But the story had to do with the impact fees that local towns in Massachusetts used to charge, or still do charge in some cases, those who get licenses to sell plant medicine, cannabis, in their town. It was up to 3%, and they were called impact fees, Stephen, right? Impact fees. Now, you told me before we went on to the show that in Uxbridge, a very small town in Massachusetts, and you're a selectman there, you're still fighting to get rid of the impact fees in your own town. Am I right?
Correct. Yes. I mean, I've been against these fees since the beginning, since the ballot question got rewritten. So, the governor would be okay with it, and have these fees for things that were never explicitly defined. They opened up the what if box for everybody. Oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? Okay, well, we have to wait and see. It's a far-fetched, and any of those things are going to happen, and they haven't happened. But the towns still want, these fees that in turn make these businesses not want to be very community friendly. And I get it. You're going to take hundreds of thousands of dollars from me and save it and do nothing with it, or spend it how you're not supposed to. But I have all these nonprofits in your town that need help, asking me for help. It's like, what are you going to do? And I really feel that getting rid of those fees would make these businesses a lot more friendly. We have to be business friendly communities, and we can't say, what if that happens, when we're not doing it to alcohol, which we know it does. We're not putting negative impact fees on CVS and everything selling pharmaceuticals that are killing people. But we're saying that, these businesses being here are a bad thing. I'll tell you what, in my town, they helped us through COVID. These businesses got us through COVID. We didn't have any empty stores or empty businesses in our town through COVID. We came out looking really good. So it's time to look back and say, like, all right, do we have anything to show besides we have extra, we have more money that we have to keep an eye on in an account? Like, there's been no negative impact. We have businesses that are getting more business from, you stop at it. When I go somewhere, I usually stop at a gas station. I might stop at a place to grab a coffee. So you're bringing in revenue to the town. And I don't see how that's a negative impact at all.
Right. Absolutely not. I think it was the Northampton mayor who was the first one to say, we don't need these impact fees. The cannabis dispensaries in their town weren't causing any trouble. They didn't have to put police on overtime or double up the protection and all this, which was a great thing. And I give Mayor Wu credit for doing this, putting back $2.86 million to the dispensaries in Boston. And Kobe Evans, I know from Pure Oasis, was needless to say, he's thrilled about it, didn't expect it. And these people, the people that are in the dispensaries right now in Massachusetts, this is 4 years into this program, people, okay? They're struggling to make a living. They're struggling to figure all this out because the regulations and the compliance issues are so strangling. The governments have done a great job of retarding the start of the industry. Forget about the growth. It's retarding the start, not even giving an opportunity to those that put up hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to get the darn store open and licensed properly and do it the right way. And now, right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The incredible the people that made that, pushed the legislation, created this legislation, the Will Luziers, the Chris Andersons, the Chanel Lindsays, the Shalene Titles, that put this together, did some crazy stuff. They built this car, and the governor, he slashed our tires, took the gas out, put a banana in the tailpipe, loosened all the spark plug cables, and was like, here you go.
And thank you, Governor Baker, for your service. Don't let the door hit you in the butt as you leave, because it's the same governor, by the way, who shut down adult use in March of 2020 in this state when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, and guess who sued him?
There you go. Well, and well,
we lost, but I've been trying at every turn to be an asset to this industry.
Well, you've done. Think about your life just for a second here. You gave your life to the cause. Now you are a perfect example of someone who wasn't just going to sit around and talk about things. You actually said, I'm going to actually get into local politics and make sure that the people in my backyard and around me understand what this plant is all about. And that's why we have so much respect for you. And I so appreciate you taking time out of your Veterans Day to join us and tell your story again. Do you ever get tired of telling that story, by the way?
I do, but you know what? It's breaking stigma. And I do not like this phrase, breaking stigma, right? Because I think people think that talking about it is how you do it. Like you said about cannabis. Okay. The way they want to frame it is lazy stoners, right? Yeah. So instead, do the opposite. Like I've since making the switch, I've ran for office. I've become a better father, become a better husband. I stand out in front of my kids, in front of the schools in town. I've been standing out there almost every morning since May, fighting bullying. So it's living the life that's the opposite of that stigma. Like that's what it comes to do. It's not just talking about it, it's doing it, but it's sharing your story. And yes, I get tired of telling it because I've heard it so many times. But if it helps one person, it is worth me being like, oh, I don't like talking. Right. So.
And I love that about you in so many ways, because you kind of dropped it in there at 1 a.m. You left the house and helped a fellow veteran in need who needed just someone to listen to. If there are people out there, whether they be veterans or not, what are some of the things that you can do if you feel like, you know what, I'm done, right? Life is so precious, isn't it?
It really is. And I want people. Everyone out there is worth. They're valuable. You're worth every attempt at saving your life. For people with addiction, you are worth 100 times Narcaning you. I don't care what other people say that there should be a limit. You're valuable. You made it through so much and made it here. We want to keep you here. You're loved, and you're needed. And really, yeah, it's just. I don't like that people like to focus on the negative so much anymore in life, And it's like, yeah, we do have a lot to be mad at. We do have a lot that we disagree on, but we all agree on so much. And there's so many common threads that we can align on and work together instead of just being, I don't like you. Okay, we've established that. Now we have to work. And veterans know how to do that. Again, I keep going back to vets, but we know how to do it better than everybody because we didn't get to choose who's in our squad or platoon. You have to work with them. You got to get over the things, or your tank is going to get blown up, or that's how it works.
That's right. Stephen, I could talk to you for hours, right?
Well, that's the story of Stephen Mandile. We'll have Cannabis Coast to Coast news for you in just a few hours here on the PCM TV network and, of course, our YouTube channel, Pro Cannabis Media. In the meantime, we salute all those veterans on Veterans Day and thank you all for your service.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of the news from the industry. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.